For over a century, the land we now know as Israel and Palestine has been at the center of one of the world's most enduring and complex conflicts. This struggle, rooted in religious, national, and historical claims, has affected millions of lives and shaped the modern Middle East. It is a conflict that resonates far beyond its borders, influencing global politics, international law, and human rights. In this video, we will explore the origins, the pivotal moments, and the lasting impacts of the Israel-Palestine conflict. We will take a step-by-step journey through the history, examine the roles of key players, and discuss the prospects for peace in a region marked by war, occupation, and deep divisions. This is not just a story about two nations, it's about faith, identity, land, and survival. It's about the past, present, and future of a people torn apart by history, and the ongoing struggle to find a path to coexistence. To fully grasp the Israel-Palestine conflict, we must travel back to the late 19th century, when two powerful ideological forces began to emerge in Europe and the Middle East: Zionism and Arab nationalism. For centuries, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire, a multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire that governed vast territories across the Middle East, North Africa, and southeastern Europe. In the late 19th century, however, the Ottoman Empire was weakening, and nationalist movements began to take hold across its domains. Zionism was born in the context of rising anti-Semitism in Europe. Theodor Herzl, often regarded as the father of modern Zionism, advocated for the establishment of a Jewish state as a solution to centuries of persecution faced by Jews across Europe. In his vision, the Jewish people would return to their ancestral homeland, the biblical land of Israel, which lay within the borders of modern-day Palestine. At the same time, Arab nationalism was growing in the Middle East. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, Arab intellectuals and leaders began to call for independence from foreign rule and the unification of Arab lands. This movement resonated strongly in Palestine, where Arab Muslims and Christians formed the vast majority of the population. By the late 19th century, waves of Jewish immigrants began arriving in Palestine, buying land and establishing agricultural settlements. While some Arabs welcomed the newcomers, tensions soon began to rise as the native Palestinian population grew concerned about the increasing Jewish presence and its potential impact on their land and way of life. World War I marked a turning point. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire led to the division of its lands between European powers, and Palestine fell under British control through the League of Nations mandate system. But before this, two key agreements would complicate the future of the region: the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which secretly divided the Middle East between Britain and France, and the Balfour Declaration, a letter from the British government promising a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. In 1920, Palestine officially became a British mandate, a period that would last until the creation of Israel in 1948. The mandate was meant to prepare the region for eventual independence, but it soon became a battleground for competing national movements: Jewish Zionism and Arab nationalism. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Jewish immigration to Palestine increased significantly, fueled by both Zionist aspirations and rising anti-Semitism in Europe. With each new wave of immigrants, tensions between Jews and Arabs intensified. Palestinian Arabs felt increasingly dispossessed of their land and livelihood, while Jewish settlers saw themselves as returning to a homeland promised to them by both history and international agreements. By the mid-1930s, the situation reached a boiling point. The Arab Revolt of 1936–1939 was a widespread uprising against British rule and Jewish immigration. While the British eventually suppressed the revolt, it left a legacy of deep resentment and mistrust on both sides. Many Palestinian Arabs felt betrayed by the British and feared they were losing control of their homeland, while Jews increasingly viewed the British as obstructing their dream of establishing a Jewish state. World War II and the Holocaust had a profound impact on the Zionist movement. The horrors of the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were systematically murdered by Nazi Germany, reinforced the belief among many Jews that only a sovereign Jewish state could guarantee their safety. After the war, thousands of Jewish survivors sought refuge in Palestine, further intensifying the conflict with the Arab population. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to solve the growing conflict. The plan called for the creation of two states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under international control. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, but the Arab leadership, along with the surrounding Arab states, rejected it, viewing it as an unjust division of their land. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the leader of the Jewish community in Palestine, declared the establishment of the State of Israel. This moment, seen as a triumph for Jews worldwide, marked the beginning of a new chapter in the region. However, it also triggered the First Arab-Israeli War, as neighboring Arab countries invaded the newly declared state, vowing to prevent its creation. The 1948 war, known to Israelis as the War of Independence and to Palestinians as the Nakba, the catastrophe, resulted in a decisive victory for Israel. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes, many of whom fled to neighboring Arab countries or became refugees in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. This exodus created one of the largest and most enduring refugee crises in modern history. For Israel, the war solidified the existence of the Jewish state, but for Palestinians, it was the beginning of decades of statelessness, displacement, and conflict. The question of Palestinian refugees and their right to return would become one of the most contentious issues in the conflict. In 1967, another pivotal war broke out, the Six-Day War. Israel, fearing an imminent attack from its Arab neighbors, launched preemptive strikes against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In just 6 days, Israel achieved a stunning military victory, capturing the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. This war significantly altered the landscape of the conflict. For many Israelis, the Six-Day War was a moment of national triumph. Israel had not only survived, but expanded its borders to include territories with deep historical and religious significance, including the Old City of Jerusalem. However, for Palestinians, the war marked the beginning of a new chapter of occupation. In the years following the war, Israel began establishing settlements in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. These settlements, often built on land claimed by Palestinians for a future state, have been a source of deep contention. Today, they remain one of the biggest obstacles to peace. The occupation has fundamentally shaped the daily lives of Palestinians and Israelis. For Palestinians, it means living under military rule, facing restrictions on movement, and dealing with the constant threat of land confiscation and home demolitions. For Israelis, it means living with the fear of terrorism and the ongoing security challenges posed by the conflict. Over the decades, numerous attempts have been made to broker peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The 1978 Camp David Accords, facilitated by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, resulted in peace between Israel and Egypt, but did not resolve the Palestinian issue. The Oslo Accords of the 1990s marked a more hopeful moment, as Israeli and Palestinian leaders agreed on a framework for a two-state solution. However, these hopes would soon be dashed. The First Intifada, or uprising, broke out in 1987 as a grassroots movement against Israeli occupation. It was characterized by widespread civil disobedience, protests, and clashes between Palestinian civilians and Israeli forces. While the Intifada drew international attention to the plight of Palestinians, it also led to an escalation in violence and repression. The Second Intifada, which began in 2000, was far more violent, with suicide bombings, Israeli military raids, and large-scale casualties on both sides. This period of violence shattered any remaining hope for peace, leading to the construction of a separation barrier by Israel, which it argued was necessary for security. Palestinians, however, saw it as a symbol of apartheid and further annexation of their land. In Gaza, the situation remains particularly dire. Controlled by the Islamist group Hamas since 2007, Gaza has been under an Israeli blockade, severely limiting the flow of goods and people. Repeated military conflicts between Israel and Hamas have left Gaza in ruins, with the civilian population paying the heaviest price. The international community has long sought to play a role in resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict. The United States, as Israel's strongest ally, has often been seen as the primary broker of peace talks. At the same time, the United Nations has passed numerous resolutions calling for an end to the occupation and the recognition of Palestinian rights. However, despite these efforts, the conflict remains unresolved. Around the world, people continue to advocate for a just and lasting solution to the conflict. Within both Israel and Palestine, there are grassroots movements working toward reconciliation, dialogue, and coexistence. These efforts, while often overshadowed by the larger political and military dynamics, offer a glimpse of hope for a more peaceful future. What does the future hold for Israel and Palestine? The two-state solution, which envisions an independent state of Palestine alongside Israel, has long been considered the most viable path to peace. However, with ongoing settlement expansion, political divisions, and deep mistrust, this solution seems increasingly out of reach. Some have proposed alternative solutions, including a one-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians would live together as equal citizens in a single democratic state. Others have suggested a confederation, where both peoples would share the land but retain separate governance structures. However, these ideas face significant challenges and are far from being realized. Despite the grim realities, there are those on both sides who continue to believe in the possibility of peace. Through dialogue, mutual understanding, and a commitment to justice, it may one day be possible to build a future where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side in peace. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a political issue. It is a human issue, impacting millions of lives on a daily basis. It is a story of suffering, resilience, and the enduring hope for a better future. Thank you for joining us in this deep exploration of one of the most complex conflicts in modern history.